Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're getting into a pretty intense, real-world developer survival story. I was recently reading this incredible post by Ilya Grigoruk. He's a backend developer at LighTech, and he details exactly what goes down when a seemingly straightforward infrastructure update turns into an absolute monumental technical hurdle. We're going to see how one developer managed to migrate a massive search architecture off of OpenSearch and over to TypeSense, all while using AI to literally survive the grueling process. So get ready, because this is a fascinating look into the modern realities of software engineering.
Okay, let's dive into this, because this quote right here, it perfectly captures the whole theme of our explainer today. You know how it goes in the software world. Management looks at a potential architecture change and they just see a simple cost-saving measure. And honestly, on paper, that's exactly what this was. LighTech had this project with a fully implemented working search feature running on OpenSearch. It had custom logic, a custom data mapping setup, basically a mini ORM, complex filters, the whole shebang. Was humming along nicely. But TypeSense is cheaper to operate, so the decision came down to simply swapping out the engines. As Ilya pointed out, it sounded like a purely technical exchange without much loss. But, spoiler alert, pulling the rug out from under a complex system is never, ever easy.
Section 1. The deceptively simple request.
So, when you've got an existing system doing the heavy lifting for your data, replacing it isn't just, swapping out a light bulb. It's more like trying to replace the foundation of a house while the owners are still inside having dinner. The ultimate limitation of this project was simple but totally terrifying. The front end should not notice any changes. Seriously. The client-side application could not be broken or altered in any way. The API endpoints had to remain identical. The query structure, identical. The search behavior, the results, the ranking, it literally all had to look exactly the same to the end user. But behind the curtain, a completely different engine was running the show.
To actually pull off that seamless one-to-one behavior, the developer had to build an adapter. Now, this isn't just a minor translational layer. We're talking about a heavyweight piece of architecture. This adapter had to intercept incredibly complex, highly specific OpenSearch queries, entirely dismantle them, translate them into a format that TypeSense could actually understand, and then, this is the crazy part, take the TypeSense output and package it back up so it perfectly mimicked a native OpenSearch response. In practice, the developer was basically tasked with building a full-fledged bridge between two entirely different universes.
Section 2. A clash of philosophies.
The harsh reality quickly set in here. These two systems, they don't just speak different languages, they think in fundamentally different ways. On one hand, you've got OpenSearch, which uses a highly flexible domain-specific language, or DSL. This lets developers build massive, incredibly complex queries. On the other hand, there's TypeSense. Now, TypeSense is brilliant, but it focuses entirely on simplicity and blistering speed. And to get that speed, it has a deliberately limited syntax. So simply converting the JSON from one to the other, it's mathematically impossible. The developer couldn't just translate the words. They had to completely rethink the fundamental logic of the queries, just to bridge this enormous gap.
Because of that huge philosophical clash, an overwhelming amount of core components literally had to be rewritten. The developer had to rebuild query generation from the absolute ground up. All that complex filtering, redone. Aggregations and their analogs, recreated entirely in TypeSense. Even the way indexes and auxiliary utilities were managed had to be started completely from scratch. And remember that golden rule we talked about earlier? All of this massive internal demolition and reconstruction had to happen without allowing a single regression for the front-end consumer. Oh, and yeah, the time allocated for this task at the planning stage was vastly underestimated. The deadline was incredibly tight.
Section 3. The AI Copilot.
So how do you actually survive a task like this when the deadline is breathing down your neck and developer burnout is practically guaranteed? You bring in an AI copilot. Honestly, without it, this task absolutely would not have been completed on time. In a high-pressure scenario with a totally unfamiliar technology stack, AI transformed from, a neat little novelty into a critical, project-saving ally. The AI took on some crucial, multifaceted roles during this migration. It wasn't just a search engine. It acted as live documentation for TypeSense. It served as a patient mentor on a completely unfamiliar technology. It was a tireless code reviewer, and it even acted as a blank generator for specific, tedious tasks. The absolute beauty of this AI copilot is that you can ask it quote-unquote dumb questions, you can ask it to compare different approaches, and make it generate boilerplate code. It never gets tired, it never gets annoyed, and it responds instantly.
And this brilliantly illustrates the exact, highly effective iteration loop the developer fell into to conquer the migration.
Step 1. Disassemble a small piece of the old OpenSearch logic. Step 2. Ask the AI how to implement that specific logic in TypeSense. Step 3. Receive the adapter code or the blank template. Step 4. Test it, find the inevitable discrepancies, clarify the prompt, and repeat. Dozens of times, iteration after iteration, piece by tiny piece, this loop was used to ensure the behavior matched perfectly. It was methodical, and you know what? It worked.
But let's be clear, it wasn't a magic wand. Ilya offers this hilarious but highly accurate analogy for the whole process. He compares using AI to inviting a buddy to a street showdown. This friend fights really well, but they've got some quirks. Sometimes the AI just gets plain stupid. Sometimes it gets distracted by the wrong details. Often it runs ahead of the locomotive, trying to solve the entire project when you literally just asked for one function. And sometimes it just gives you redundant, circular answers. The key here is strict guidance. You have to give it good hints and clearly indicate the specific target. When you do that, it is immensely powerful.
Section 4. Lessons from the migration.
After surviving this grueling technological showdown, a completely new paradigm emerges for software teams. And honestly, the implications of this story stretch far beyond just OpenSearch and TypeSense. Think about the old requirement when facing a massive technological shift. Mostly, it was panic. Management would say, we need a senior specialist with 10 years of experience in this exact specific stack immediately. But the new reality, as proven by this migration, is entirely different. Now the requirement is simply time and well-formulated questions. AI fundamentally lowers the barrier to entry for unfamiliar technologies. The value has shifted away from possessing incredibly niche rote experience and moved directly toward prompt engineering, logic mapping, and just plain patience.
So the crucial takeaways really boil down to this. First, never underestimate a migration. Replacing a search engine literally means replacing the architecture itself. Second, different engines mean different philosophies, not just different syntax. You really have to rethink the logic. Third, maintaining a one-to-one consumer behavior without breaking the front end is absolutely the hardest part of the job. And finally, AI is no longer just a toy. It's a real, working tool that is fundamentally changing how we solve complex engineering problems right now.
Which brings us to a final question I want to leave you with today. We've just seen how AI empowered a developer to tackle a completely unfamiliar stack on a crazy tight deadline. But if AI dramatically reduces the barrier to entry for complex technologies, what does it truly mean to be a specialist today? If the answers are right at our fingertips, perhaps our real expertise lies in asking the right questions. Thank you for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.